This is Toontown House, one of the original Toontown servers that popped up in 2014 after Toontown Online had shut its doors. It wasn't known as one of the most popular Toontown servers at the time, but it definitely had its charm. Not a lot of footage exists of it anymore, so I'd like to thank Chazars for still having this video up of him playing it so many years ago, so we can all still enjoy it in the year of our Lord and Savior 2025. This was definitely a very kooky Toontown server, and that becomes very obvious when you just look at it for 5 seconds. Something is very off with this Make a Toon screen. There were no transitions, the heads were a little too big, and by the time you got to the Toontorial, you knew this game had a special little touch to it. But unfortunately, by 2015, the game had F6'd itself and unfortunately was never seen again. But if you do want to see more of Toontown House specifically, I will leave Chazars' video down in the description. Trust me, that video is hilarious.
Oh, it goes right into the ship. What's happening?
And also, while I have you here for 1 second, I want to shout out G Fuel just for being a very long time sponsor of me in this channel. They didn't pay me to say this, but if somebody uses code MEGASNOOP, by the time I make another video, I will give away a free tub of G Fuel. So just code MEGASNOOP. But the reason I brought all of that up in the first place, minus the G Fuel, is because as the years went on, more and more Toontown private servers started to emerge. And then a lot of them ended up shutting down. Most of them shortly after launching, and some of them even well before that. Some of these servers are as follows, but not limited to Toontown House, Toontown Relived, Toontown Planet, Toontown Stride, Toontown Apex, Toontown Project Altus, Toontown Cog Invasion Online, Toontown Funny Farms, Toontown Reunited, Toontown Frenchie, yes that's a real thing, Toontown HD, and Toontown Gear Grind. If you haven't heard of most of these, you're not alone. I didn't even know they existed until I started researching for this video. But if you're like me, then you've definitely at least heard of Toontown Rewritten and Toontown Corporate Clash. Both are wonderful servers, and neither of them fit towards the topic of this video, so they will not be talked about today. But if you are here because you're rediscovering your love for Toontown again, I highly recommend one of those two. You should go try them out. And don't ask me which one to play. They're both good. Just flip a coin. What you might not know is that there are in fact other Toontown servers that do still exist, like literally right now, and you could go download and play them. Like someone is still spending real money to keep a Toontown server up that potentially nobody's even heard of. So I was curious about which servers are still around and what state they're currently in. Not like US state, I'm not talking like Colorado, although Toontown Colorado would go so hard. But what made them different from all of the other dozens of Toontown clones, why they really never took off, and to see who's still playing them now. So buckle in and join me as we explore some abandoned Toontown servers. Okay, big disclaimer real quick before we get into this. All of these are independent projects run by people you don't know and do not have to abide by the same security guidelines as most licensed developers. So all of these applications are technically malware that I'm willingly downloading onto my own PC, but I'm doing so with fake names, fake emails, and even a VPN, and then deleted them all off of my system right away. Download and play them at your own risk. Okay, thank you. Let's get to our first server. Toontown Fellowship opened in early 2015, probably, and it was one of the first ones to cement itself in the Toontown space. Its big boast is that it had colored gloves, which I guess was enough for people to check it out, but surprisingly it's still around, so I'm really excited to see what kind of updates it's made in the past 10 years. Okay, we gotta cut that out for a second, all right? Because I need to vent to you about how absolutely impossible it was for me to actually download and play this game. So I initially tried to make a brand new account with a brand new email, and when I went to register, it told me to check my email for the verification link. I never got that email. So what I had to do was end up digging up my account information from 9 years ago to punch that in and play it, only for the game to start updating and get stuck at 74%. After one more try of relaunching it, it finally worked. So you can thank my unwavering persistence that we have any of this footage whatsoever. Okay, here we go. Toontown Fellowship is as pretty close to vanilla Toontown as you're probably gonna get. I mean, surprisingly, they're still trying to update the game as recent as the last month or two, and attempting to add fresh ideas like one-laugh Ubers. But as of right now, it's basically vanilla Toontown. Okay, so after I was done recording this while I was in the editing process, then they came out with the update for the one-laugh Ubers. So you can go enjoy that right now if you'd like. Otherwise, everything else is about the same. The one main quirk is that at the beginning of the game, you get to choose between the two gags you start with, and for 2015, that was pretty revolutionary. However, in 2025, that's kind of become a default for most servers. There was some general UI updates done to the sticker book too, but the one thing that really caught my eye was when I was in the Toontorial and there were actually names on the Toon Platoon. There are legitimately people still on this server somehow 10 years later. But the question is, how many of them? Well, when I first entered Toontown Central, I saw one right away. A black cat named Enigmeow. What a stroke of luck finding someone within the first minute being there, right? Wrong. Apparently, it's an NPC. Not all hope was lost though, because I am able to check the population from the sticker book. And Toontown Fellowship had 7 people online. Well, 6 now, including me. Can I just say that is genuinely more than I thought it was gonna be. But while I was on the game, I figured I'd play a little bit to see if it plays any differently than like Toontown Rewritten. And there are a few changes, like for instance this dynamic battle cam, which I think is pretty cool actually. It doesn't help my gags hit anymore, but hey, I like it. But while I was turning in my tasks, I hit a roadblock. You see, there's one task towards the beginning of the game that I was really hoping that I wasn't gonna see. The make a friend task. Like, I know that we joke about it being one of the hardest tasks in Toontown because it's hard to make a friend. But when there's no one on the game, yeah, it's kind of hard to make a friend. I'm surprised this is even still in the game, considering the developers should at least have that hindsight that it's going to be a roadblock for most people. Honestly, the other Toontown servers I'm covering today took this task out because they know better. Yet here I am in Toontown Fellowship, stonewalled with making a friend. There's only myself and 5 other people on the game. Oh, and would you look at that? They're all in Cashbot HQ. Well, I needed to make a friend, and I knew where to find one. So I started the long journey. Sidebar, this is also where I learned that there's like basically no filter in this game. And I say basically because like you can misspell your words and kind of jumble them all together and it'll still go through. So you can say things like, oh my god, this game doesn't have a filter. However, the game will moderate you if you try to say the word poop. You can say boob though. Like that's fine, I guess. Anyway, I finished my long trek to Cashbot HQ, but by the time I got there, all 5 of them were now in the CFO. And I didn't want to wait, so I quit. But again, since it was my older account, I decided to hop on one of my other toons to see what kind of progress I made. And genuinely, I had no idea that I had made it that far into the game. Apparently, I put some hours into this game back in the day. But yeah, that's Toontown Fellowship. Still kicking somehow. And although Toontown Fellowship was originally seen as the substitute Toontown Rewritten back in 2016, Toontown Fellowship didn't have any huge meaningful changes to really set the experience apart. And although the server never shut down, it didn't really have that X factor to make it take off either, like speaking Japanese. What? I'm just trying to segue into Toontown Sunrise. When I say Fellowship never had an X factor, Toontown Sunrise literally didn't have anything. And in many cases, it actually took away some key features. It was meant to be an archive of Toontown Online, but not to be confused with Toontown Archive. As a matter of fact, both of these are basically interchangeable, as long as you don't look at the dialogue. Both are meant to be historical archives of Toontown Online, just with different goals. Toontown Sunrise not only allows you to play vanilla Toontown, but also to try out different regional servers like Japan and Germany before those were shut down. And Toontown Archive is the original Toontown as well, but allows you to look at different builds of Toontown Online throughout the years, like before they had level 7 gags, or before Disney self-sabotaged the whole project. There isn't really a whole lot to talk about here since they really are just kind of vanilla Toontown, and I had my struggles trying to play both of them. Like for some reason Toontown Sunrise would just like prepare to launch and then never launch. But if you want to know the real difference, Toontown Sunrise is run by Sunrise Games, a group who's trying to bring back old MMOs like Pirates Online, and the other one is run by the guy who used to be in charge of Toontown Infinite. So both of them are kind of at a loss at this point. Speaking of Toontown Infinite, yeah, bet you didn't know this one was still around, huh? Toontown Infinite was that other server that was around during the early days of Toontown servers, and still somehow stuck around all these years later. Except it didn't. Like it opened in 2014, and then closed in 2015, and then it opened again, and then it closed again, and then sometime between then and now it opened again. When me and my friends first played it in 2015, we really only went over there because they had golfing and Toontown Rewritten didn't, but because TTR saw this, 2 days later, they added golfing. And then we all left TTI, and then we just never went back. But it did have some interesting additional changes, like a more difficult factory, and an interesting second cog round of the CFO that would put the 8 toons into 4 groups and have 2 toons in each laser cog fight. And for the time, those were some really ambitious ideas. Well, here we are 10 years later, and there is no change. Like it is still completely the same. The game doesn't even have a tutorial like the other servers do. It just plops you right in. There's a slight change to the estate, like adding a fisherman there to sell your fish to. And they also added some music to the estate that just kind of doesn't fit, in my opinion. Like, it sounds like it belongs in a survival horror game. There's some updated textures in the Toontown Bank and the Toontown Library, and even some fun details like very specific library books, like the Desolation of Cog, the Toonie Games busting bosses, and Flippy's World Records. But it's come to my attention that this is like also in Fellowship, and I don't actually know which of the 2 servers put it in first, and it really doesn't matter because every one of these servers is just stealing from each other anyway. On the other side of it though, it seems like Toontown Infinite actually took away some features too. Like, the FPS is probably the lowest I've seen on any active Toontown server, and it almost feels like it's purposely lowered from the original Toontown Online. Also, Goofy Speedway just doesn't exist anymore. It's gone. Like, maybe the police are finally investigating it after the insurance fraud that Goofy never took responsibility for when one of the crashes happened on his courses. But the one genuine unique feature that this Toontown server has that the other Toontown servers don't is Lobot field offices. Not to say that the other Toontown servers just like don't have this. They absolutely have like the code and the assets to make it, but most of the other servers realize that this is just like, it's really boring. You just kind of take the propeller and you hover to the platform, and then you hover to the next platform, and then that's it. Like, my dog could do that. So this being in this server is really just a gimmick trying to reel people in. But you know what? Maybe it worked. Let's find out how many people are still playing this server right now. Well, to my surprise, there was actually one other person on the game. Whoa, I know, right? I don't know who they were or where they were, but they were on there. So the game isn't technically completely dead, and there were even toons on the Toon Platoon here too. But I wouldn't recommend hopping on this game to try to like make a new friend, because trying to hop on to find that one other person is like trying to find hay in a needle stack. And if I wanted to play a Toontown server that literally had nobody else on it, I would just play Toontown Realms. Okay, but does anyone actually remember Toontown Offline? Show of hands. Anybody? It was a version of Toontown that was purely offline. Hence the name. You downloaded the game onto your PC, and then you were in full control. Give yourself max laugh and gags, go solo the CEO with infinite fires and unites, or just sit there and talk to Mickey. It was like you were the dev of your own personal Toontown server. But the team that was behind it wanted it to be a little bit more than that, and they provided some new content and new ways to enjoy it, such as adding a playable prologue that you can go through to see the creation of the cogs with Scrooge McDuck. I thought that was pretty cool. So in 2022, Toontown Offline rebranded to Toontown Realms, which I can't play. I know this is about like exploring abandoned Toontown servers to see which ones are still up, but like I don't know how to I can't get it. Every time I go to the website, it looks like this. So this one may or may not still be up. I have no idea. But like, if you still have it on your computer, you could still play it. So technically it's still around. So I can't really gauge how many people still play this game because there's no online server to have a population to look at. But if you are interested in what the server had to offer, Stuck the Duck made a really fun, engaging video about it. He showcases all of the customizations, all of the modifiers, and the easy to use AI so you can make all of these changes without being a master coder. You could pretty much just make your own Toontown server. So I'm not sure how much is going on behind the scenes here because their last post was over a year ago, but I still think it's one of the coolest projects that the Toontown community came together to create, and I don't think it gets talked about enough. You know what else doesn't get talked about enough though? And for good reason. Toontown Operation Desert Storm was a very ambitious project that I didn't realize came out in 2017. It is 8 years old now. How has it been around for that long? It was the one Toontown server that dared to ask, what if we put Toontown on mobile? And then quickly found out why no other Toontown server has gone to mobile. It's because it runs horribly. In case you didn't know, now you know. It runs horribly. But the server is still up, so we're gonna go check that out. I do have to hand it to ODS though, which is something I never thought I'd say, because this project has made some of the largest strides out of any of these servers that I've seen so far. The game has an automatic built-in 2-factor, the pick-a-toon screen is unique and different, they added a new toon species in the cow, there's a hardcore mode that gives you toon permadeath, or perma-sad, and you can create your own custom Uber where you can choose the laugh cap at any number between 15 and 142. Plus, they made their own prologue introducing the game. Like, granted, it is just a repurposed Toon Estate acting as the Toontown Schoolhouse, and you could just sit here while the alarm is going off and just do nothing. Like, yeah, all of Toontown is being destroyed right now, but I gotta go watch some TV.
We are open.
Or maybe the alarm is going off to let you know your computer has been hacked and all of your information has now been stolen. But the rest of the prologue is literally watching Toontown Central get taken over by the cogs, and then a quick little scene that's like, not for my toony eyes. What is that supposed to mean? But I decided to try to do some of the task line, and granted, I did get a little farther than I did on Fellowship, but my game did end up crashing the moment I walked into the bank. So I said screw it and walked up to this NPC here who literally just let me skip to Donald's dock, cause that's an option in this game. But one of the giant focal points that sets this server apart is the changes they made in battle. There's a whole new line of cogs called tech bots, and after taking a good long look at these, they're pretty uniquely made cogs. Like, I would fully believe that some of these were part of the original Toontown Online, cause they at least fit the style. Plus the cogs have special abilities that completely turn the tide of each battle to make you think twice about how to approach them. Whether it's giving them sound immunities, which ended up making me go sad, or healing the other cogs in battle, which also made me go sad. Outside of that though, the game doesn't really do a whole lot to stand out. But a lot of the other quality of life updates are literally things that you already see in all of these other servers. The big question is, how many people are playing it? And that answer is 0. Yeah, I was the only one online during this. And I was on in the middle of the afternoon on a weekend. Although there is actually a pretty good explanation as to why this is. So if you don't know, the big news right now is that ODS is going through a complete rebrand. They're starting over with all of the good ideas from the server and carrying them to a new server, Toontown Hostile Takeover. I think the idea is similar to what Toontown Project Altus did when it transitioned to Corporate Clash. And hey, it worked out for them. But there is a lot of hype for this new server, as if the view count on their announcement video couldn't tell you that. I guess we'll just have to check that out when it releases. So until then, we do still have one more server to take a look at today. Tooniversal Studios is definitely a Toontown server. At least I think it is. Like, by definition, it's a Toontown server. Tooniversal opened in 2019, making it one of the more recently opened Toontown servers, but that's also like 6 years ago. And their last post was made in 2022, well over 3 years ago. So although Tooniversal wasn't necessarily the largest server around, it is probably genuinely the most ambitious. And not in a good way. One of the most standout differences is their new gag track, the spin gag. It allows you to do minimal damage, but then it additionally gives damage over time as the battle goes on. Which, yeah, is something that we didn't have in a Toontown server before, but also in Toontown, it doesn't really feel like it's helping much when all the other gags just kill in one hit. So, keep in mind though, the game still is in open beta 6 years later, with no intention of ever leaving beta. And Tooniversal also tried their hand at making a new toon species as well, and they came up with the hedgehog. Yeah, kind of terrifying, isn't it? Like, even the laugh meter looks like it's melting. But I have to be quirky, so of course I made a hedgehog, and I named him Green Bean. Except no, I didn't, because apparently that name is inappropriate, so instead, I named him Green Bean, which is a lot better apparently. But what did this server add? Well, they have some neat additions like different weather, a day and night cycle, and also a retro mode that lets you play through Toontown with the old settings of TTO, which zooms the camera up to the back of your toon's head so you cannot see where you're going at all. But you know what? The Toontorial was new and different, and I actually kind of liked it. And inside the Toontorial, they got to showcase a couple of their new cogs, the press bots. And I might be so bold to say that the press bots might actually look better than the tech bots. I really love the way a lot of these look, and maybe if they weren't in Tooniversal, they would fit right at home in one of these other Toontown servers. They look pretty cool. Like, oddly enough, with a lot of these Toontown servers, whether they're still open or not, a lot of them thrived with their unique cog designs. And I think the artists of this community always go so above and beyond when coming up with these. So shout out the artists out there, you know who you are. You guys made some dope cogs. Too bad the rest of the game isn't like that. So again, there's no real dialogue with the task line. You walk up, they tell you your task, you walk away. Kind of like a conversation with my mother-in-law. Hey, go defeat a cog. But why? Because I said so, that's why. Then I decided I didn't want to do tasks anymore, so I started exploring. First stop, Goofy Speedway, which is not closed in this game. Matter of fact, they actually expanded it. Outside the general race courses, they did add brand new cog race courses. They have you driving around a large boss bot HQ while you're in a tiny little Hot Wheel car. And this sounds really awesome. Like, this had the potential to be really cool. And then it was the worst thing ever made. There are so many short turns that slow you down, there is absolutely no momentum going through this first course. You hit a boost just to smack into the wall, and you spend the rest of the course just very slowly maneuvering around like it's 5 o'clock traffic. And somehow the other one is even worse. The second one is so confusing about where the turns are supposed to be. The paths are too narrow, and then there's like a giant area that looks like it's the way to go, but no, you're going the wrong direction. Come on, don't you know to immediately take a hard 90-degree angle right off of that ramp that launched you 1,000 feet into the wrong direction? Stupid. At least you can quit out of the race early if you hate it and don't want to waste your time. For a cost. Yeah, you have to pay to escape this hell, and I gladly did it. But if you can believe it, it's not the only way they expanded Goofy Speedway. They gave it 2 genuine Toontown streets, and I think they look pretty cool. The street itself is modeled off of a road, and some of the shop names have some fun puns like photo finish printers. But then you also get some shop names like TB1 and TB2 and TB5. So obviously, yeah, they didn't finish the street. And it wouldn't be an incomplete street without a tunnel at the end that goes nowhere. Don't worry though, because that's not the only playground that they decided to improve and then completely left to die, which ironically is actually a good reflection of the game in general. Acorn Acres also had some improvements done by adding some random objects all over the playground. And let me tell you, they almost nailed the streets. You walk through the tunnel into this beautiful wide open area with a winding road that the cogs patrol. But it's kind of refreshing to not have towering buildings on either side and kind of give you that elbow room to look around and breathe. I like the open concept that gives the Toons the ability to go outside of the box and explore a bit, if there was actually anything to explore. Yeah, all of this space, there's nothing there. It's big and empty and unutilized. But hey, at least they came up with some clever building names for the area, right? Guess not. Okay, but what about their new playground? They added one called Fluffy Farms, which is immediately broken the moment you walk into it because it teleports you under the gazebo. This could have been a really cool opportunity to model it after a farm. Have a big barn somewhere, have some tractors around, maybe have some fun little farm mini games. There was a real opportunity to make something immersive and unique that really feels like it belongs. Or you can literally copy the same street you made before and just this time give it some elevation. There's still nothing to explore out there. And the final new playground, which I have to put into quotations because it's not technically new, is called Lost Central. If you don't recognize this area, this was the original design for Toontown Central before the Toontown Online developers made the right decision and went with what we have now. It's much more plain and bare, and there is literally nothing to do here. This playground was added to this game to literally be nothing more than a gimmick. And then they changed Flippy. I will not elaborate further. But if you can't tell, this server is the definition of biting off more than they can chew. There are several more streets in the game that are big, hollow, empty roads that don't have a single building name and a tunnel at the end that leads nowhere. And I think the weirdest part of the game has to be the estates. There's this one house at the estate that says to Fairway Drive, and when you go through it, it takes you to like the Toontown equivalent of the back rooms. It's a street with no connections at either end, a bunch of random empty estate houses just placed all over, and all of the buildings are called Toon Shop with nothing inside of them. What in the Toontown is this place? I can't even think of what it was supposed to be. But let's get to the reason why you're all here. How many people are still playing this? And surprisingly, there's still 12 people online. Wait, no, 18. There's 18 people on this game. That's almost a player base. I even got to catch up with one of the players for a quick interview to see what they had to say. And they said pretty much what you'd expect someone who only plays Tooniversal would say. I mean, personally, I'm not a fan of the golf cart that immediately crashes your game every single time you go on it. But specifically, I'm disappointed that I didn't get to show off the new golf courses they added. Actually, I think they're in a Stuck the Duck video somewhere, so you should just go check out my boy.
85%. Let's go. What? Hey!
But this video was a unique look into a lot of these different servers that either existed at one time or still surprisingly do. And even more so, the big aspirations outside of the largest couple servers we already know. Even with less players, these servers still show their dedication to their communities. Or it could just be that the owners of these servers forgot that they had this server on autopay on their credit card and just haven't checked in on it in a while. But I do think it paints a good picture about what makes a good Toontown server and what doesn't. Gimmicks for the sake of gimmicks might get you some attention, but it's not sustainable. And players will tend to flock to servers that don't just update regularly, but put an emphasis on catering to the community aspect. They want it to be a place where people connect and make friends. But I'll tell you what, it doesn't stop these other Toontown projects from still popping up to this day and trying to share their own unique perspective of what makes Toontown great. So let me know which of these servers you've ever played and how you feel about them. And then also G Fuel Code Mega Snoop, I will give one of these away, maybe on stream. Probably. And be sure to like and subscribe while you're here, and other videos popping up on the screen. Okay.